Noah. Grant's voice cut through the music, low and sharp enough to make my stomach drop. I had already seen him. That was the problem. Grant Walker stood across the bar beneath a strip of blue light, one hand wrapped around a glass he clearly wasn't drinking from, staring at me like I had just caught him breaking into his own house. For a second, we froze. People laughed around us. Ice rattled in glasses. Someone bumped my shoulder and muttered an apology. I barely heard it. Grant was the last person I expected to see in a gay bar. My manager. The guy who wore press shirts on casual Fridays. The guy who never talked about dating, except when people at work joked about Claire, the woman everyone assumed was his girlfriend. He looked different here. Not relaxed. Not free. Terrified. His eyes flicked toward the entrance, then back to me. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe he was meeting a friend. Maybe he walked into the wrong place. Maybe I had finally reached the point where one overpriced drink made me hallucinate my boss under neon lights. Then Grant set his glass down and started walking toward me. My pulse hammered with every step. You know him? Mason leaned closer beside me. I shook my head too fast. Not really. That was a lie. Grant stopped in front of us, close enough that I caught the clean scent of his cologne beneath the sharp mix of citrus and alcohol. His jaw was tense. Can I talk to you? Mason looked between us, clearly interested. Should I be worried? Work thing, I muttered. Another lie. Grant's gaze stayed on mine. Outside. It wasn't quite an order, but it had the same weight as every sentence he used in meetings. I should have refused. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Neither was he. Still, I followed him past the crowded dance floor and through the side exit into the cold alley behind the building. The door shut, cutting the music down to a dull thump. Grant dragged a hand over his face. How long have you been here? I stared at him. Seriously? Noah. About an hour. His eyes narrowed slightly. And you saw me when? 30 seconds before you saw me. He looked away, shoulders tight beneath his dark jacket. I had never seen him nervous before. Grant was the guy who handled angry clients without blinking. Now he couldn't even look at me. I'm not going to tell anyone, I said. His eyes snapped back to mine. I didn't ask you not to. You were about to. Silence. His throat moved as he swallowed. Rainwater dripped from a fire escape somewhere above us, steady and annoying. Finally, Grant exhaled. No one at the office can know. There it was. I folded my arms, trying to hide how hard my heart was beating. Then I guess we both have something to lose. His expression changed. Just slightly. Like he had been so busy panicking about himself that he had forgotten what seeing me there meant. You're not out. Not at work. Grant studied me for a long moment. Too long. The alley suddenly felt smaller. Okay, he murmured. Your secret's safe. So is yours. I turned toward the door, ready to end the strangest conversation of my life. His hand closed around my wrist. Not hard. Just enough to stop me. Heat rushed up my neck before I could control it. Grant seemed to notice too. His fingers loosened, but he didn't let go right away. Were you here with someone? He asked. I looked down at his hand, then back at him. Why does that matter? Grant went completely still, and that was the first moment I realized he might not only be afraid of being seen. Grant let go of my wrist like the question had surprised him too. It doesn't, he muttered. I raised an eyebrow. That was convincing. He looked toward the alley door, then back at me. The music thumped through the brick wall behind us, low and steady. I just wanted to know if someone was waiting for you. Mason is. The guy at the bar? Something in his face tightened before he smoothed it out. I noticed. Of course I did. My friend, I clarified. Grant nodded once, but the tension in his shoulders eased anyway. That shouldn't have mattered to me. It did. I shoved my hands into my jacket pockets. Was that all? No. He glanced toward the street like he was checking for familiar faces. How often do you come here? I almost laughed. Are you interviewing me now? I'm trying to understand. Understand what? Grant rubbed the back of his neck. I had seen him do that only once before, during a presentation when a client changed the entire project 10 minutes before the meeting. How this works? The answer caught me off guard. He looked almost embarrassed by it. Not ashamed. Just lost. You walk in, I told him. You order something. You stand around pretending you're not looking at anybody. His mouth twitched. That part one figured out. Then you're doing great. For the first time that night, he smiled. It was small and gone too fast, but it changed his whole face. I hated how much I liked it. I've never been here before, he admitted. I guessed. His eyes narrowed. Was it that obvious? You spent 20 minutes holding the same drink and watching the exit. Grant looked down, almost laughing at himself. I was working up the nerve to leave. Most people work up the nerve to come inside. I did that too. The way he said it made something in my chest pull tight. He had come alone. He had stood in that room terrified, and I had been too shocked to notice how hard that probably was. You didn't pick the easiest place for a first time, I said. I found it online. That somehow makes it worse. This time, he actually laughed. Quiet. Real. Then the alley door opened, and two guys stepped outside. Grant moved closer without thinking, his shoulder brushing mine as he made room. He stayed there even after they passed. The space between us disappeared. I could feel the warmth of him through my jacket. We just stood there. You should go back to your friend, he murmured. Probably. He'll wonder where you are. Probably. Grant turned his head. His eyes held mine for 1 second too long. Then another. My pulse started climbing. I told myself he was only nervous. That this was just two coworkers having an awkward conversation in an alley. Nothing more. Then Grant reached up and brushed something from my shoulder. His fingers lingered near my collar. Lint, he explained, even though neither of us looked down to check. Right. His hand dropped slowly. Noah. Yeah. He hesitated. Would it be strange if I asked you to stay for one drink? My brain stopped working. With you? A faint smile touched his mouth again. That's usually what the word with means. I stared at him. Grant Walker, my manager, was standing outside a gay bar asking me not to leave him alone. It probably meant nothing. He just needed someone familiar. Someone safe. That was what I told myself. Then he added, quieter, I think I'd rather go back in if you were beside me. Going back inside with Grant should have felt less strange than standing alone with him in an alley. It didn't. The second we stepped through the door, his hand settled lightly against the middle of my back, guiding me through the crowd. It was probably practical. The place was packed. People kept cutting between us. Still, his palm stayed there longer than it needed to, warm through my jacket, and my body noticed before my brain could explain it away. Mason spotted us near the bar and gave me a look that was way too interested. Work thing, he called over the music. Grant removed his hand immediately. Apparently, I shot Mason a warning glance. He ignored it. I'm Mason. Grant shook his hand, polite and controlled again. Grant. Mason looked between us, then smiled. So you're the boss. A knot formed in my stomach. Manager, I corrected. That sounds safer, Mason replied. Grant's eyes moved to me, and for half a second, there was something almost amused in them. We ordered drinks. Grant stayed close enough that our shoulders touched whenever someone passed behind us. He asked questions quietly. Which nights were busiest? Whether I knew the bartender. Whether Mason came here often. That last question sounded casual. It wasn't. You're very interested in Mason, I pointed out. Grant looked down at his glass. I'm making conversation. With me. About him. His mouth curved slightly. You seem to enjoy making me uncomfortable. I didn't know that was possible. He looked at me then. Really looked. The smile faded, but he didn't glance away. You'd be surprised. The words landed somewhere low in my chest. Before I could answer, Mason leaned across the bar. Noah, are you coming back to my place after this? Or is your boss stealing you? Everything around us seemed to go quiet, even though the music never stopped. Grant's fingers tightened around his glass. I waited for him to laugh. He didn't. I'm going home, I said quickly. Mason raised both hands. Relax. I was asking. Grant took a slow drink, eyes still on me. He barely spoke after that. 20 minutes later, he said he was leaving. I followed him outside because apparently I had stopped making smart decisions that night. At the curb, he checked the street, then pulled out his phone. Text me when you get home. I blinked. You don't have my number. I do. It's in the employee directory. That's slightly unsettling. You'll survive. A cab pulled up. Grant opened the door, then paused with one hand on the frame. Noah. Yeah. His expression was careful again. Don't go home with Mason. My heart hit hard against my ribs. Why? For 1 second, I thought he might answer honestly. Instead, he looked away. You've had 2 drinks. I'd rather know you got home safely. It was reasonable. Responsible. Exactly the kind of thing a manager could say without meaning anything else. But his jaw was tight, and he hadn't looked at Mason once when he said it. Good night, Grant. Text me. The cab pulled away before I could decide what to think. By Monday morning, he was back in a pressed white shirt, leading our project meeting like Friday night had never happened. He barely looked at me. Then someone joked that Claire must hate how late he worked. Grant's eyes lifted across the conference table and found mine. He held my gaze until I had to look down. At 9:17 that night, my phone buzzed from an unknown number. "You looked uncomfortable today." I stared at the message, my pulse picking up. A second one appeared before I could respond. Was it because they mentioned Claire? Why would Claire make me uncomfortable? I typed back, then deleted it. Too defensive. I tried again. "You were the one acting weird." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Disappeared. Came back. "Coffee tomorrow?" That was how I ended up sitting across from Grant at a small cafe 40 minutes from the office. Both of us pretending the distance made this normal. He had chosen a table in the back, away from the windows. Of course he had. "You didn't answer my question," I told him. Grant peeled the paper sleeve off his cup in slow strips. "Neither did you. Claire isn't my business." His eyes lifted. "That's not what I asked." A heavy knot formed in my stomach. He looked tired. Less polished than usual. No tie. Sleeves pushed up. It shouldn't have made him feel more real, but it did. "Fine," I said. It was weird hearing everyone talk about her after Friday. "Because you think she's my girlfriend?" "Because everyone does." Grant looked down at the mess of cardboard in his hands. "She's not." I waited. He exhaled through his nose. "Claire is my sister's best friend. She comes with me to family things because my mother asks fewer questions when she's there." That sounds complicated. It's cowardly. The word came out flat. Honest. I didn't know what to do with that. Grant stared into his coffee. "I've spent years letting people assume things because correcting them felt harder. You don't owe anyone an explanation." "Maybe not." His gaze returned to mine. "But I hated that you thought it was true." My heartbeat stumbled. "Why?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Grant went still. For a second, I thought he might answer. Really answer. His mouth parted, then closed again. The cafe noise filled the space between us. Cups clinking. Milk steaming. Someone laughing near the counter. "Because you looked disappointed," he said finally. I swallowed. "You were watching me that closely?" "Apparently." The corner of his mouth moved, but there was no humor in it. I tried to laugh anyway. "This is starting to sound less like coffee and more like a performance review." Grant leaned back. "Do you want me to stop?" I should have said yes. Instead, I shook my head. His eyes softened. That was worse. We talked for almost an hour after that. About first times in places like the bar. About how he had driven past it 3 times before parking. About how I had sat in my car for 20 minutes the first time I went alone. Somewhere between those stories, the tension eased. Then a customer brushed too close behind my chair. Grant reached across the table and caught my hand before my coffee tipped. His fingers closed around mine. Firm. Warm. We stayed like that. His thumb shifted once against my knuckles. My breath caught. Grant noticed. I saw it in the way his eyes dropped to our hands, then slowly lifted to my face. The whole room seemed to narrow around us. He leaned forward just slightly. Not enough to call it anything. Enough that I stopped breathing. "Noah," he murmured. The front door opened behind me. "Grant." A familiar voice cut through the moment. We let go so fast my chair scraped the floor. One of our co-workers stood by the entrance, staring at us with open surprise. Grant straightened, expression closing like a door. We were discussing the Fulton project. The lie came too easily. Our co-worker nodded, but his eyes dropped to the space between our hands. After he walked away, Grant looked back at me. Whatever had almost happened was gone. Still, when we stood to leave, he moved beside me and rested his hand at the small of my back. Quiet. Brief. Deliberate. "Would you ever go back there with me?" he asked. I looked at him. "To the bar." His hand stayed where it was. "Yes." Then, softer, "But only if you're there." The next Friday, Grant was already outside the bar when I arrived. He stood near the entrance with both hands in his coat pockets, watching every person who walked past like one of them might recognize him. "You know you're allowed to go inside without me," I told him. His shoulders loosened when he saw me. "I know." "Then why are you standing out here?" He glanced at the door, then back at me. I was waiting. 2 words. That was all. A familiar flutter kicked up in my stomach. Inside, Grant chose the same shadowed corner as before, but he seemed less tense this time. Not comfortable exactly, just willing to try. He ordered what I ordered, then complained about the price after one sip. $14 for this. "You make more money than I do." "That doesn't make it taste better." I laughed, and something in his expression softened. For a while, It almost felt easy. Then the bartender came over. He was around my age, friendly, with a smile that stayed on me longer than necessary. Another one? He pointed at my empty glass. I'm good. Water, then. On me. He slid a napkin across the bar before walking away. A phone number was written beneath the glass. Grant stared at it. That happen often? What? Strangers giving you their number. I folded the napkin once. Not often enough to become a personality trait. His jaw shifted. Are you going to call him? I looked at Grant, surprised by how flat his voice had become. You care? I'm making conversation. You used that excuse last week. His eyes held mine. The silence stretched until I could hear my own pulse under the music. Before he could answer, someone clapped a hand against my shoulder. Noah Bennett. My entire body locked. Eric from accounting stood behind me with two friends, already grinning. I knew that was you. Grant moved back, so quickly his chair scraped the floor. Eric looked between us. And Grant. Wow. Did the Fulton project get a lot more interesting? We're having a drink, Grant replied, voice calm but too formal. Eric laughed. Here. The question was light, but it landed hard. Grant's face closed off. I watched the fear return in real time. It was my idea. I cut in. Grant was nearby. Eric nodded slowly, clearly not convinced. Right. Well, I'll let you two get back to your very normal work meeting. The second he walked away, Grant reached for his coat. I should go. Grant. He knows us. He saw us having a drink. At a gay bar. His voice dropped. That matters. To who? He looked toward Eric, then at the door. Not at me. You don't understand. That hurt more than it should have. Actually, I understand pretty well. Grant rubbed his hand over his mouth. That's not what I meant. Then tell me what you meant. He finally looked at me. There was panic in his eyes, but something else too. Regret. My father knows people at the company. My family thinks Claire and I are heading somewhere serious. I can't have this becoming a story before I know what I'm doing. I swallowed. And what are you doing? Grant stared at me like the answer scared him. The bartender returned and placed a glass of water in front of me. His fingers brushed mine. Grant noticed. Of course he did. A minute later, the crowd shifted behind us, and someone bumped into my back. Grant caught me by the waist, pulling me against him before I lost my balance. His hand stayed there. My palm landed against his chest. For a second, we froze. His breathing changed. So did mine. Grant, I whispered. His eyes dropped to my mouth, then snapped toward Eric across the room. He let go. This is exactly what I mean. The words came out rough. You're afraid someone will see you touching me? His face tightened. I'm afraid I'll stop caring who sees. Grant left before I could answer. 1 second, his hand was still warm against my waist. The next, he was gone through the crowd, shoulders tight, not looking back. I stayed at the bar long enough to feel stupid, then folded the bartender's napkin into a square and left it beneath my untouched water. By Monday, Grant had become painfully professional. No texts, no coffee, no stopping by my desk for questions he could have emailed. In meetings, he looked at everyone except me. I told myself that was better, cleaner, exactly what I wanted. Then Wednesday afternoon, I saw him through the window of a restaurant across from the office. Claire sat across from him, smiling as she reached over the table and touched his hand. A few minutes later, they stood outside. She kissed his cheek before walking away. I knew what he had told me. I knew she wasn't his girlfriend. Still, something sharp twisted under my ribs. Grant turned and saw me on the sidewalk. I looked away first. After that, I stopped replying to anything that wasn't work-related. When he asked if I wanted coffee, I claimed I was busy. When he held the elevator, I took the stairs. It was childish. I knew that. I also didn't care. Friday night, I was still at my desk when the office lights switched to their dim evening setting. Grant appeared at the end of the hallway. No jacket, sleeves rolled up, expression tired. Are you avoiding me? I kept typing. I have work. You've spent 3 days leaving rooms when I enter them. Maybe you're entering too many rooms. He came closer. Noah. I shut my laptop harder than necessary. What do you want me to say? The truth would be a start. I laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. Fine. I saw you with Claire. Grant stared at me for a second. Then his eyebrows lifted. You're jealous. I'm not. You are. You don't get to sound pleased about it. His expression changed immediately. Softer. More careful. I'm not pleased. Good. I'm relieved. That stopped me. The hallway went quiet around us. Grant stepped closer, leaving barely a foot between us. Claire was helping me figure out what to say to my sister. About what? His eyes held mine. About me. My anger loosened, replaced by something worse. Hope. And the kiss. She was proud of me. He paused. Not romantic. I looked down. It's none of my business. You keep saying that. His voice dropped. But I wanted to be. My heart started pounding. Grant leaned one hand against the edge of my desk, close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw. At the bar, when I touched you, I didn't want to let go. I stopped breathing. Grant. And when that bartender gave you his number, I hated it. He looked almost frustrated with himself. I hated that he could be obvious about wanting you while I was standing there pretending I didn't. The words hit hard enough to make my chest ache. Then why did you leave? Because Eric was watching. Exactly. Grant closed his eyes for a moment. No. I left because I knew if I stayed, I was going to forget he was watching. Silence stretched between us. My pulse felt loud in my ears. This can't just happen when nobody is around, I whispered. I know. And I'm not going to be some secret you visit when you're scared. His face tightened. You're not. Then what am I? Grant looked at me for so long that I almost turned away. Then he reached out and took my hand. Not by accident. Not to stop me from leaving. He threaded his fingers through mine and held on. You're the reason normal doesn't feel normal anymore. My throat went dry. Footsteps sounded from the far end of the hall. Grant glanced toward them, but he didn't let go. I'm still scared, he murmured. But I don't want to go back to pretending I don't want this. The footsteps got closer. Grant's fingers tightened around mine once, then slipped away before whoever it was turned the corner. It was only a security guard making his rounds, but the damage was already done. Grant stepped back. I watched the distance return to his face almost instantly. I should go, he murmured. Right. My voice came out flatter than I meant it to. He looked like he wanted to say more, but the guard nodded at us and kept walking. Grant grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. We'll talk tomorrow. We didn't. Saturday passed with no message. Then Sunday. By Monday morning, I had convinced myself he regretted everything. It was the obvious explanation. He had panicked in an empty hallway, said too much, held my hand, and spent the weekend deciding it had been a mistake. At work, he was polite, careful, worse than distant because he was trying too hard to seem normal. Morning, Noah. Morning. That was it. No look that lasted too long. No quiet stop by my desk. No coffee invitation. By lunch, I was angry with him. By 3, I was angry with myself for caring. That evening, Claire was waiting in the lobby when I came downstairs. She recognized me immediately. I could tell by the way her expression changed. You're Noah. I stopped. And you're Claire. That sounded more threatening than I expected. Long week. She gave me a small, tired smile. Grant told me he messed up. My throat felt tight. That's one way to put it. He didn't say he regretted you. The words landed too close to what I had been thinking. I looked away. Claire crossed her arms. He told his sister yesterday. I stared at her. He did. It went better than he expected, which somehow made him more terrified, because now this is real. What is real? She gave me a look like I was being intentionally difficult. You. Before I could answer, the elevator opened behind us. Grant stepped out and froze when he saw us. Claire glanced between us. I'm leaving before either of you makes this more complicated. She squeezed Grant's shoulder on the way past, then disappeared through the front doors. Grant stayed where he was. You talked to Claire. She talked to me. I told her not to interfere. She ignored you. She does that. A faint smile touched his mouth, then vanished. Silence settled between us. I hated how familiar it already felt. Why did you disappear? I finally asked. Grant looked down at the floor. I thought you needed space. You thought wrong. I was trying not to pressure you. You held my hand and told me you wanted this. Then you acted like it never happened. His jaw tightened. Because I was afraid you'd wake up and realize being with me meant hiding. And you decided for me? No, his voice sharpened, then softened. I was trying to figure out whether I was asking too much. I folded my arms. You could have asked me. I know. Grant moved closer, but stopped before the space between us disappeared completely. I don't regret Friday. I held his gaze. It looked like you did. I regretted letting go. My heartbeat stumbled. He looked exhausted. Honest. I'm not good at this, he admitted. At what? Wanting someone and not knowing what I'm allowed to call it. The anger drained out of me, leaving something more fragile behind. You don't have to call it anything yet. Grant's eyes searched mine. And if that's not enough for you, then we talk about it. We don't vanish. He nodded slowly. Okay. Okay. We stood frozen. Then his hand brushed mine at our sides. Barely a touch. Careful this time. Noah, he said quietly. I wasn't pulling away because I changed my mind. His fingers hooked around mine for 1 second. I was pulling away because I was scared I'd already made you matter too much. Grant's fingers were still hooked around mine when the elevator doors opened again. 2 people from legal stepped out, talking about dinner plans. Grant pulled his hand back. Fast. Too fast. I watched him straighten his jacket and put that careful expression back on. Good night, Noah. There it was. Normal. Professional. Safe. Something in me finally snapped. No, Grant stopped. The 2 co-workers glanced at us as they crossed the lobby, but I didn't care. Not this time. No what? Don't do that. His eyes narrowed slightly. Do what? Say something like I matter too much, then turn me back into an employee the second someone walks by. His face tightened. This is the office. I know where we are. I stepped closer. I'm not asking you to announce anything. I'm asking you to stop acting like this only exists when the room is empty. Grant looked toward the glass doors. Cars moved past outside. People crossed the sidewalk. He seemed to notice every single one of them. You think I don't know that? His voice stayed low. I think you keep deciding fear is a good enough reason to leave me guessing. That landed. He looked back at me. Really looked. I'm trying. Then tell me the truth. I have. Not all of it. Silence. His hands flexed at his sides. What do you want me to say? Say why you waited outside the bar for me. Grant swallowed. Because I didn't want to go in alone. Why did you care about Mason? You know why. I want to hear you say it. His eyes dropped for a second. Because I was jealous. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I didn't let him stop there. Why did Claire know about me? Because I couldn't stop talking about you. The words came out rough. Honest. Grant took 1 step closer. Because after that first night, I noticed every time you entered a room. Every time you laughed with someone else. Every time you looked at me and then looked away. His voice softened. I noticed before the bar. I just had a name for it afterward. I forgot how to breathe for a second. And what's the name? Grant looked almost annoyed at himself. Wanting you. The lobby went quiet around us. Or maybe I stopped hearing everything else. That's not the part I'm afraid of, he continued. I'm afraid of what happens after. After what? His eyes held mine. After I stop pretending this is temporary. My throat went dry. Do you think I'm temporary? No, the answer came immediately. That's the problem. I almost laughed, but it caught somewhere in my chest. Grant moved closer until only a few inches separated us. You're not some experiment, Noah. You're not a secret I picked because it was convenient. His hand lifted, hesitated, then settled against my wrist. You're the first person who has made hiding feel worse than being seen. I looked down at his hand. He followed my gaze, but didn't let go. Then stop hiding from me. Grant's thumb moved once against my skin. I don't know how to do this perfectly. I didn't ask for perfect. What are you asking for? I met his eyes. A choice. He went still. I could see the fear there, but he stayed. Okay, he whispered. I choose this. This what? A faint, nervous smile touched his mouth. You really are going to make me say everything. Yes. Grant exhaled. Then he reached down and took my hand again, right there in the lobby, beneath the bright lights and security cameras. I choose you. Footsteps sounded near the elevators. His grip tightened. This time, he didn't let go. The footsteps belonged to Eric from accounting. Of course they did. He slowed when he saw us standing near the elevators, hands linked between us. His eyes dropped, then lifted. Grant went completely still. I felt the old reflex in him, the instinct to step back. Explain. Make it harmless. I started to loosen my grip before he had the chance. Grant held on tighter. Working late again. Eric looked between us. His tone was casual, but not careless. Grant took one quiet breath. We were just leaving. That was it. No project excuse. No mention of Claire. No sudden distance. Eric nodded, understanding more than he said. Have a good night. You too. We waited until the elevator doors closed behind him. Grant stared at the empty lobby. That was terrible. I let out a laugh I had been holding in. You survived. Barely. He didn't even react. He works in accounting. They hide emotions for a living. I laughed harder, and Grant finally smiled. The tension left his shoulders a little. He looked down at our hands like he was still surprised they were there. Are you okay? I asked. He thought about it. No, honest. Simple. Then his thumb moved across my knuckles. But I don't want to let go. So he didn't. We walked out of the building together, past the security desk, through the glass doors, and into the cool night air. He glanced around once. Only once. Then we kept walking. Things didn't become easy after that. Grant didn't walk into the office on Monday and tell everyone his life story. I didn't expect him to. He started smaller. He told his sister the truth. Then one close friend. He stopped letting people call Claire his girlfriend. At work, we stayed professional, but he stopped pretending I was invisible. He brought me coffee without inventing a meeting. He sat beside me at lunch when other people were there. Once, during a team happy hour, his knee touched mine beneath the table. I didn't pull away. 3 weeks later, Grant texted me on a Friday afternoon. Meet me at 8? I knew where before he sent the address. When I arrived, he wasn't waiting outside. He was already inside the bar, sitting at a table near the middle of the room. Not hidden in the back. Not watching the exit. Just waiting for me. His face softened the second he saw me. You came. You invited me. You could have said no. I sat across from him. I thought this was supposed to be a real date. Grant smiled. Nervous. Warm. It is. The bartender came over and looked at me with recognition. Grant noticed. Still interested in his number? He murmured. You're still jealous? Apparently. Good. He shook his head, trying not to smile. We ordered drinks. We talked about work for 5 minutes, then agreed not to talk about work. We talked about terrible movies, his sister, Mason, and the fact that Grant owned 4 nearly identical blue shirts. Normal things. That was what made it feel important. When we left, the sidewalk was busy. Grant stood beside me with his hands in his coat pockets, looking at the crowd moving past us. I didn't reach for him. I wanted the choice to be his. After a moment, he pulled one hand free and held it between us. This is still scary, he admitted. I know. I might be bad at it. You already are. He gave me a look. Helpful. I smiled and took his hand. You're getting better. Grant laced his fingers through mine, and we started walking. He didn't let go when people passed. He didn't let go when we reached the corner. He didn't let go when the light changed, and we stepped into the crosswalk together. The first time I saw Grant there, we both wanted to disappear. The next time, he was waiting for me. And when we walked out, neither of us looked away.